Welcome to episode 6 of Radio Arizona RV. Today I'm going to be talking about patio awnings and fabrics. We're going to discuss the awnings themselves, the fabrics, the different brands, replacement parts, and so forth. We're not going to get real in depth because patio awnings are a pretty basic piece of equipment on an RV, just like a slide-out awning. They're not too complex, but you do have to replace the fabric. You do have to do some maintenance, but overall, they're just there and they work for you every time. The electric awnings probably have a few more problems than a manual awning, but overall, they're pretty dependable regardless of the brand. You know, they're all made very similar. You know, there's slight differences, but I wouldn't say there's anything really different about them other than Carefrees don't seem to roll up as tight as an A&E. A&E just seems to have this spring thing figured out. They got torsion assemblies that work. They roll up tight. So currently, we're going to talk about A&E and Carefree. Those are the two major brands that we deal with the most. You know, there's older ones that are no longer being made, such as Carter and Faulkner. But, you know, you can still get awning fabrics for them. Some parts are still floating around out there. You might be able to interchange something if you're real creative, but the fabrics are definitely available. And I've heard that a Dometic torsion assembly will interchange with a Carter or a Faulkner. I forget which. I don't know if it's true or not, but maybe so. I've never had to do it. And then there's Fiamma, which is an offshoot of Dometic for the most part. But their brands are mostly in Class C motorhomes. You see them here and there, but very rarely. Then there's the higher end ones like Zip D, who's been around for a long time. And we don't do anything with Zip D. Just deal with Zip D yourself. That's my attitude. A unique awning, and there's not a lot of them, so you don't get a lot of experience with them. So it's easier to stick with just A&E and Carefree, the two major brands out there. Then there's Girard, which is a very high-end electric awning on a lot of your bigger and larger, more expensive coaches, which Girard comes from, you know, created the awning. He's the originator of A&E. So there's a long history with Girard and awnings, but they're high-end. So we'll go back to the A&E and Carefree manual type awnings. You know, the maintenance is pretty basic. It's just maintaining the fabric, which is using a product such as 303, which I've talked about in previous episode about slide-out fabrics. Keeping the awning fabric clean, you know, washing it regularly, and before you roll it up, make sure that it dries. Pretty basic things. If you have an acrylic awning, the same thing applies. You want to make sure it's dry before you roll it up. And they have special cleaners, which 303 makes them, for the acrylic fabric versus the vinyl fabric. Most of your manual awnings have the vinyl fabric. The ones that don't generally have a metal weather shield. So the metal weather shield protects the acrylic awning when it's rolled up, whereas the vinyl has a vinyl weather shield. It's just actually the fabric itself. It just rolls into itself, and they call it a vinyl weather shield. It's just a distinction. It's not an extra piece. It's just the fabric itself. You know, the vinyl awning fabrics last generally from anywhere from 7 to 12 to 13, 14 years, depending on the climate you're in, how often it's used, what kind of weather, you know, if it's windy out all the time where you're at. There's variables, but they hold up pretty well. And a lot of people with vinyl manual awnings ask about a metal weather shield. It's really not worth the expense. You're probably going to be looking at it anywhere from $150 to $250 for the weather shield. And then you have $100 for shipping because it has to go on a truck. It can't go by UPS, so the shipping is going to be $100. You know, you can count on that, at least $100. And then you can't use the less expensive fabric. You have to go to a more expensive fabric, and it's going to add another $150 to $250 to the price of an awning fabric. So all in all, it's not really worth it when you do the math. You know, you can get a universal awning fabric made by Dometic or A&E, and it's going to last you for another 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 15 years, as long as your other one lasted. You know, we sell hundreds of these awning fabrics a year, and we get asked that question all the time about the metal weather shield. We've done the math. It's just not worth it. You know, even if you cut out the shipping, if you didn't have to pay the freight, still, the extra expense of the material is not worth it. So stick with what you have. If you have an acrylic with a metal weather shielding, just by all means replace the acrylic fabric with acrylic. It costs a little bit more, but you're already there. It's a nicer looking fabric. The vinyl awning fabrics, on the other hand, you know, they serve a purpose. They're sometimes not as nice looking as the acrylic, but at the end of the day, they work very well. They keep the sun off you, the rain off you. They do what they're supposed to do. So keep them clean and keep them dry. You know, even when you're in storage, you know, water gets into them. Even here in the desert, at the end of the summer, I rolled out my awning fabric my awning to replace the fabric, and it was wet. So they do store water. They do keep moisture in them, so you don't want that to go on because that creates mold and that adds to the deterioration of the awning or the fabric. So all in all, if you have a manual awning, even an electric awning, pretty much the only thing that makes it where you want to replace it, and a major expense, would be the roller tube being bent. Even the electric awnings, if the motor fails, it's still worth repairing the awning because everything else is smaller. It's small pieces. And on the manual awnings, the secondary rafters, the tension rafters, the inner arms, sometimes they get bent, they wear out. They have the little sliders on the secondary rafter, the little piece of pot metal that slides up and down. They fail. But all in all these parts are pretty inexpensive compared to buying a new awning or a complete new set of hardware. So your awning will last for decades as long as you don't hit something with it or it gets damaged in a windstorm. The hardware is built to last, and it really does. It's very impressive that these awnings, as simple as they are, they last as long as they do. You might have to put a $20 part on it every couple years, or maybe a $30 part, but it's worth it. It's worth the money, and the parts are still available, so why not keep that awning up to date and working properly? And when you have all the parts on there that are working good, that means even your wife or your spouse can put the awning up and down without struggling. And I say that because quite often we go out to replace an awning fabric and the inner arm's bent. And the customer, the man of the house, says, don't worry about that. I got that under control. It's a little bit of a struggle, but I can do it. And for $33, you replace that inner arm and you don't have that problem anymore. And then if someone else has to do that awning for some reason, they can do it without the struggle. See what I mean? It's keeping it working properly makes it easier for everybody, especially if something changes down the road where someone has to help or do it for you. These awnings are basic, so there's not a lot to it. In fact, replacing the fabrics, most do-it-yourselfers could definitely do these. They're not all that difficult. Having two people makes it a little easier. And just some, caution, common sense. So just maintain your awning, keep that fabric dry. Treat it, a couple times a year with a 303 product that's suitable for your fabric, whether it's vinyl or acrylic. Sometimes the acrylic is called cloth, so to separate some confusion there. So for any questions, if you have a question about an awning fabric, whether it's a manual awning, a power awning, whichever brand you might have, we can answer it for you. We always keep a nice selection of parts in stock if you're here locally, or if you need to order online. We can ship them to you. So I want to thank you for listening today and tuning into episode number 6 of Radio Arizona RV.